a kid in Bangalore who makes a 3-minute video, a tribute video for his friend who had just passed away, and was seen by few thousand people. It helped them connect with this memory of this person who's with us no longer. Was asked to take this video down. There's something not right about it, and the law needed to reflect that. And so, after doing this for more than a decade, I thought I want to be in that room, helping shape that policy.
We have the India AI Summit coming up in Feb 2026. And so I want to focus a bit on the work you've been doing in the AI governance and policy space.
Sure.
You were very closely involved with drafting the AI governance guidelines, which was a government-led process. So for people who do not know, I actually started my career as a legal and policy associate with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in their trade policy division.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had my share of working with the government.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I was actually pleasantly surprised. So tell us a bit about how was your experience working with the government?
Some of the smartest people I've met
Correct.
are in government.
Yeah.
And that's not surprising at all. India has the most difficult entrance exam for civil service.
Correct.
Right? The UPSC, it's crazy the number of people who try and apply for it, the number of interviews. So when I talk to an IAS officer about an issue involving tech, which is not even their specialization, the kind of grounding with which they're able to receive that information, ability to look at, like I said, different approaches, different disciplines, and come up with a policy solution is incredible.
Have you watched the movie Her?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that was released in 2013. Okay, and in less than a decade, we're almost living that reality. So where do you draw that line between, say, usefulness and dependency? How do you see privacy and trust issues vis-a-vis these AI companions?
There's this cybersecurity expert called Bruce who talks about this. Is sometimes we might get very intimately close to a companion, but that's what he calls a category error, right? Because we're treating them as friends when what they really are is a service.
So there's a lot of differing views on AGI. Some folks say it'll take at least 5 to 10 years before we get there. And there are other folks who are saying, hey, it's right around the corner.
So let me start with this concept of AGI. Obviously, anyone listening will be like, wait, what do they even mean? So AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And even everyone who's aware of it knows that this is a very poorly defined or underdefined term.
Right.
But for the sake of this conversation, let me offer a definition. It's just, an advanced AI system that's able to perform cognitive tasks as well as most humans.
Human, yeah. A dish you can never get tired of could be street food or comfort food.
Oh yeah, well, actually it's street food and comfort food for me. It's this Thai dish. It's called Pat Krapao.
Okay.
It's just like mince meat, chicken, whatever meat you like, pork with rice, fried egg on top. And it has this holy basil, that's this Thai basil thing.
Okay.
It's like very fragrant, flavorful dish. So it's very simple.
I should try this. I haven't tried this ever.
It's the one dish I make well.
Books you would recommend for folks getting into tech policy?
2 books, AI, so Artificial Intelligence by Melanie Mitchell. And on the policy side, legal policy side, Lessig's like Code is Law.
Yeah.
You like that book? Have you read?
Absolutely. My guest today is Amlan Mohanty, a lawyer, researcher, and AI policy expert based in India with over 12 years of experience working at the intersection of law, technology, and public policy. He currently works across government, think tanks, academia, and industry with affiliations including Niti Aayog, Carnegie India, the Center for Responsible AI at IIT Madras, and the National Law School of India University. Earlier in his career, Amlan led public policy and government affairs at Google India, working on issues ranging from privacy and digital platforms to artificial intelligence. Before that, he practiced as a corporate lawyer advising on technology regulation at Trilegal and later at PLR Chambers. Alongside his policy work, he is also a long-time writer on technology and society and has been blogging for years on Techlawtopia, where he works through ideas on law, governance, and emerging technologies. In this conversation, we talk about his journey into tech policy, India's evolving approach to AI governance, the global AI race, and what all of this means for the future of work, democracy, and society. Hi, Amlan. Welcome. I've known you for more than a decade now, and I think I first met you at this workshop on internet law and policy. So even then, you were deeply interested in law and technology and how it impacts society. So I want to start there. What got you so deeply interested in law and technology in the first place?
Yeah, firstly, Kirti, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. What got me into tech, law, and policy? Look, the short answer is that, I've always been a bit of a nerd, playing around with computers and video games. So it seems obvious that I would work in technology in some way. But I actually have a personal story to share here. So is that okay?
Sure, sure.
So I think this was around my high school years, 10th and 11th grade. And at that time, you kind of decide, what you want to do after.
Right.
And the obvious choice, obviously, for any, Indian middle class family is, engineering or medicine and things like that. So I did the science stream.
Same here.
You did as
Yes,
well?
yeah.
Okay. So, and you're not a doctor or an engineer. So says something, right? And 6 months in, I was like, I'm not enjoying this, right? I remember it was like a chemistry class and it just wasn't gelling for me. So I went down to my principal's office and I said, hey, like, I kind of know what I want to do broadly in this area. I want to probably be a lawyer. I'm interested in English and history and so on. And so I just went and changed streams. And then actually is really the story of how I came to tech law, particularly. In my class, I had a close friend. Her name was Tanvi, and tragically one day she was in a car, and then there was a car accident, and unfortunately she passed away.
Oh.
It's a close friend of mine at the time, and I made this tribute video. It was just a collection of photos that I had. I crowdsourced from a lot of her friends and family, and this was early, 2006, 4, 5, and YouTube had just come on.
Okay.
So I mashed this all up together,
Right.
put some background music, and uploaded it to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared it with a couple of friends, and it got several thousand hits in just a few days. I was kind of happy to see that. Lots of people, from her friend circle, but outside country kind of wrote into me saying it was nice. And, in like 5 days or so, I got a notice from
Right.
YouTube
Right.
saying, I'm going to have to take this video down, my friend. And, I had obviously dabbled with some of kind of this creative work, some remixing and so on. And I'd heard, of course, I was, you might want to censor this, but I was an active user of the Pirate Bay. So obviously all of us were, right?
Yes, yes.
LimeWire, Napster, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, something's wrong here. Something doesn't feel right because, it didn't seem like I was commercializing this product. I had kind of attributed exactly what songs I was using. And yet kind of, there was this legal notice essentially said you either had to mute the video because it was infringement of the songs that I'd used. And it was like 30-second clips of like a Led Zeppelin song and so on. So
Right.
I was like, this is what I want to focus. I want to know why this doesn't feel right, and if I can do something about it, that would be great.
That's a very interesting story, Amlan. I mean, it's sad in a way, but it's also it sort of highlights what's wrong with the copyright law and how it works in the digital world. So I want to start with your National Law School days. I mean, you studied at National Law School Bangalore. So any memorable experiences or moments that has stayed with you from NLS days?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, both on the personal and professional side. I'll start with the personal. I made my best friends. My best friend today was my roommate in college. You find, they say, your family, your friends. So I have several of my closest best friends are people I went to law school with, and that's just irreplaceable. So lots of memories of thinking about ideas, talking about ideas, staying up all night, going on little trips, and so that I really savor till today. And on the professional front, we were the first batch that did this national law exam, right? This CLAT exam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
it started with your batch.
It started
okay.
with our batch.
Okay.
I wrote the exam. I was admitted in 2008, so I probably wrote it in 2007, 2008. And so for us, it was obviously a new experience, writing this exam and getting in. But once you were there, it was just a matter of pride. Obviously, it was the top law school in the country. But then it was really, what do you do with it? What do you make of it? Is really what people say, right? And so I decided very early on, I wanted to focus on some types of law, like technology law and IP law. I wanted to do certain types of thing like blogging, occasionally debating. And so that's kind of what I invested my time in. And so, I got a lot of professional networks that allowed me to kind of exercise and practice these skills. So that's what I'm really, lucky about and grateful for.
So did you actually start blogging Techlotopia during your law school days?
I blogged for this website called Spicy IP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. You've heard of it. I
Yes,
know.
of
I
course.
think that's also maybe where we connected. I think.
Very sad. Shamnath Bashir is not with us anymore. I think I kind of indirectly worked with him for some, there was some competition going on, so we worked with him.
Yeah.
But I never got to meet him.
Okay.
So he started Spicy IP,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
This really tells you like the value of a good mentor in law school, because you're kind of looking for people who have something to share, are open, are warm, are approachable, and it's just been a lifelong journey for me to try and find these right mentors. And actually, Professor Shamnath Bashir was the first one, I can honestly say, really inspired me to think about issues at the intersection of tech and law and society. And intersection is not even the right word, because it just feels like a technical term to describe what you do, but it's really about how does this transformative, amazing technology impact people on the ground. And so he looked at it from the lens of IP, thinking about questions like copyright and access to knowledge, and these were issues that I worked with him on. It was this big, I can think of one like case that really in my law school days really, I think, changed kind of the trajectory of how I was thinking about it, which was the DU photocopying case, the Delhi University photocopying
Right. I think
case.
Swati was also part of that.
Yeah, Swati was also part of that.
Right.
Yeah, of course, from your law school.
Yeah.
So yeah, we worked on this together. But I mean, briefly, this was a photocopying shop in Delhi University that was essentially photocopying chapters of various textbooks and compiling them into what are called course packs,
Right.
which students used to
Correct.
use for
Yes.
preparatory material. Of course, they're not all buying individual textbooks and 10 of them. Each of them cost several thousand rupees, tens of thousands of rupees. And so there was at some point a litigation where these publishers, Oxford University, Cambridge University, big publishers, right, sued both Delhi University and the photocopying shop called Rameshwari Photocopy. So it's called the Rameshwari case.
Okay.
And so a bunch of academics, including Professor Shamnath Bashir, Lawrence Liang, another academic, got together and said, hey, we need to intervene. So we filed intervention petitions, one on behalf of academics and one on behalf of students. So I led the student research team and it's really... it was the first time I did this.
Oh, you were part of that as well. Okay.
Yes, I was
That's
part
great.
of that. And I was blogging about this simultaneously with kind of...
What year was this?
This must have been 2009, 10. Yeah, maybe 2000.
It still feels so fresh in my memory because I kind of remember, I think Swati sharing it on LinkedIn or some social media, and I think there was a celebration around it.
Yeah.
So it just still feels very fresh in my memory.
Oh yeah, we won the case. Nothing more impactful than putting in all of that, blood, sweat, and tears. And I should just say, for us, it was also really revelatory that, there were like about 300 students from law schools around the country that said we want to be part of it. So, Professor Shamnath Bashir, Lawrence, I, another friend and colleague, Sai Vinod, who was at NUJS, we kind of, delegated some of these research tasks and really very interesting questions, right? Like we were talking earlier about, how copyright and technology are kind of interacting, and it seems like there's an explosion coming and the law is trying to keep up. And that was precisely the question in the DU photocopy shop, right? Which is, what is this mechanical act of photocopying, right? How is that different from students kind of copy pasting an excerpt of an article, and compiling it for their own research notes? Not very different, right? And so we had to argue really that under copyright law that was permitted. It's in the course of learning, right? You're not just photocopying these textbooks to share or sell to friends in other schools or colleges. They're doing this as part of instruction, as part of their learning process. And so eventually the court agreed that if you don't allow this, students are going to have to buy original textbooks worth tens of thousands of rupees, multiple copies of them, which they can't afford. So in public interest, they ruled in our favor, and very happy
that's
outcome.
fantastic. Huge victory. Right. So Amlan, you graduated from National Law School, then you joined Trilegal in the TMT practice. Then you decided to leave Trilegal and go and join PLR Chambers in their more sort of policy-oriented practice. What prompted that decision?
Yeah, so firstly, I want to give credit where it's due. Like Trilegal, the first law firm that I graduated, I again knew very early on about my first or second year that this is a firm that specializes in tech law. And so I wanted to at least build my foundational legal research, writing skills there.
Right.
So, 2 years of doing that, I think really helped me take a problem, break it down to its like bare constituents, think of it from a technology lens, from a law lens, and analyze that issue. And 2 years of doing that, I got a sense that I kind of know how this works, right? I'm able to analyze a legal issue, do the research, write up a legal memo, provide an opinion, which is what we did a lot of advisory for big tech companies that are trying to enter the Indian market, looking at how to interpret a certain law in the IT Act around privacy policies or so on.
Okay.
And after doing that for about 2 years, I felt like I kind of had a hang of it. But again, I have a story here, which again
Sure.
led me
Please
to
go ahead and share it.
led me to work more on policy, which is there was an entrepreneur who was working with drones at the time, building drones, trying to commercialize drones. This was 2014, 13, 14. And they approached me and they said, hey, we're partnering with a large sporting organization to use in India to launch drones to do.
So what, these were indigenously built drones? Is it?
No, these were foreign drones, but Indian company, startup, small startup, really smart.
It, is it?
Yeah, they were importing it, which was fine at that time. There weren't any Indian drones, but they wanted to use it for a big sporting event for audiovisual. It was big, obviously drones were new then, and really great shots. And they said, "Hey, we just saw that we can't do this." Right, and then if you remember, there was actually this DGCA notice, the civil regulator had put up a notice in 2014 that said that you cannot use drones for civil purposes.
So nothing flying aerial objects.
No UAVs is what it was called.
What is UAV?
Unmanned aerial vehicles are allowed for civil operations. And it was just a blanket, and it wasn't a restriction even. It was just called a public notice, which is very odd. But of course, civil aviator regulators have the power to do this. And so they approached me and they said, "Hey, we need to do this. What do we do? Can you give us?" And I realized in that moment, all I could do as a legal advisor is to give them a memo, charging them several $1,000s to say, "Hey, you can't do this." And actually, what they needed,
that's frustrating.
Yeah, and what they really needed at that time is someone to go and speak to the regulator and say, "Hey, this is why it makes sense to create an exception, to rethink this public notice, this ban as it is, and to really work with the regulator to explain the business, commercial, technical, policy implications of this." That's very different from what a corporate commercial lawyer did. And so I realized, I want to find the one place that kind of did this at that time, 2013. There weren't a lot of policy firms or even public policy thinking around tech, right, outside of tech companies.
Right.
And so I decided that I wanted to move to Delhi, which I thought was the bigger move. Like I've lived in Bangalore all my life. It's like I need to be closer to where the regulators are, where the government officials are, and work on frontier emerging tech policy. That's why I moved.
Ah, that's interesting. But these days, I think the regulation has changed, right? Because I see a lot of these drones flying over my house, actually. So
yeah, maybe that should be illegal, but too close to home.
What's the current law on this?
Yeah, there's a bill that's being discussed right now, and it's about really liberalizing the market. But yeah, we moved a law. It's been a decade since that public notice. But the government has realized, there is obviously some super science fiction-y futuristic ideas like Amazon delivering a food delivery packets with drones.
Yeah.
And that can have multiple obviously commercial policy regulatory implications. So that's not allowed yet. But civil operations for aerial photography, why not, right? For disaster management, why not? Like the government agencies, public bodies need support. And why not work with the private sector where they're able to build, manufacture, assemble these drones, customize them for very specific use cases, and operate them on a commercial model for very specific, public policy, public interest purposes, or purely commercial purposes. So there has been a much more rationalization of that particular regime, and I'm happy to kind of see that that's happened.
Okay. So after Trilegal, PLR Chambers, you joined the Google Public Policy and Government Affairs team as a policy counsel. So what does a policy counsel do on a day-to-day basis in a huge tech company like Google? And how was that different from, say, your experience at Trilegal as a corporate lawyer?
Yeah.
Or even PLR Chambers?
Sure. The joke inside Google, at least in the policy team, is that no 2 days are the same.
Okay.
And 1 month at Google feels like 3 or 6 months. Yeah, because It's a small team to start off with. These aren't big teams. Like, law firm, you think about,
Yeah.
a 20-person team. The law firm itself is like 100 people. You can mix and match people. But with policy team like Google, you're part of a very small, like, commando-like team.
Right.
Five people, 6 people. That's when I joined. That's what the size
And
was.
it's true of all in-house teams because they're always
Yeah.
understaffed.
And I wouldn't.
Sort
Yeah,
of.
I don't know. I'd say management would want you to think efficiently staffed.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're expensive, right? Like when you're hiring someone in a company, there's obviously a lot of commercial implications of that. But also, you want the best person for the job to be able to do multiple things. So to answer your question, like what do? They do multiple things. One is obviously you want to track kind of what the landscape is. That's critical. Two is you want to work what they call cross-functionally. So you're just one wing in this giant company that involves legal teams, product teams, research teams, marketing teams, communications teams. So you are just one element in a larger universe that works on a specific outcome, right? Or objective or a project. So I'll give you examples of projects we worked on, right? One is like a tech for good project, right? So especially during COVID, I remember, really happy and proud of kind of the high impact projects that I worked on. One I remember was, working very closely with the Google Maps team to map, 10,000 plus night shelters that the government had created for people to access on Google Maps, find them very, close by, and they were free. So I'd coordinate with governments, state governments, local governments, central government, find exact GPS coordinates for each of these night shelters, ensure they're on Google Maps so that if someone said, and typed or spoke in, whatever language, night shelter near me, they'd find the closest night shelter and they'd get, for that day or for, period of time, some kind of lodging, right, and shelter, especially during the lockdown. There's all
So
of
it's
these.
all over India.
It's all over India, right?
Okay.
So 10,000 of these night shelters were mapped on to,
okay.
and same thing with COVID vaccine centers and so on. But I was really particularly proud of these night shelters because people wrote to us, especially during the lockdown. Migrant workers moving around, they're not actually at home. They're in a new city. They're traveling. They're moving from state to state. So during that period, if you were able to even direct some people to the right centers to get some shelter, that's felt like a good use of technology for positive good. So that's an example of how you'd work. I'd worked very closely with the Google Maps product team to ensure this is localized, like local language support. Work with government agencies to get that data. Work with legal teams to ensure that this data is accurate. Questions of, and so on, and market this. Communicate this. How do you get this to the ground? How do you get this word out? Right. Migrant workers aren't going on Google Maps and just searching for this on the fly.
Correct, yeah.
So getting that word out. Grassroots kind of communication. So these are the things that I would never have experienced. I'd never have gotten in a law firm or a policy firm.
Right.
Working inside a company, you get to work. So I chose to work at Google because I wanted to be closer to where the technology is and to work cross-functionally. And this is an example of that. You also work on kind of policy campaigns. So let's say something around content regulation or data protection. I remember very early on when the whole personal data bill conversation was happening, I knew very early on that we would have to discuss this idea of non-personal data, which is all data that's not personally identifiable to you, like Kirti. But that data is still important and valuable, right? It's aggregated data. So it's data of you, everybody in this room, 5 of us on this room, are at the state level of Bangalore. If you aggregate that data, it has some value.
Correct.
How do you govern that data, right? So very early on, kind of went in, thought about this, worked with many people, experts, and Google has fantastic experts, right? And by the way, this is like a little tidbit from inside Google. We use obviously internal Google Chat, right? Google Chat, Gmeet, whatever you want to call it, and every employee is on it. And by the way, you can ping anyone.
Okay.
Like anyone, and I mean like CEO down, you can ping them. So if you have a question,
did you ever speak to Larry Page? Because
Larry
he's
Page
disappeared.
was
He's just disappeared. Where is he?
I was thinking about that too. Sergey is back,
Yeah, he's back,
and he's coding and he's working on the AI stuff. Everyone has their own priorities. Larry was not there at the time, but Sundar, Jeff Dean, actually someone I know I have pinged, and spoken to Jeff Dean, the chief AI scientist. So maybe we'll talk about AI later in the day, but that was the kind of connection network that got me inspired to work on specific issues. That you can just ping the chief AI scientist that worked on neural networks and large language models before it was even a thing. Is really what the value of working in a company like Google is.
So it sounds like a highly cross-functional role, and everyone's very approachable. So must have
Yeah.
been an exciting time at Google.
Yeah, and I'm not even sorry to interrupt. I'm not even talking about the crisis management.
Uh-huh.
There's a YouTube video that needs to be taken down. You need to act on it quickly. You need to think about product launches. So you're changing a policy on the app store, right? Let's say how much to charge developers, or what kind of fantasy online real money gaming apps are allowed or not allowed. And we are the first port of call. We have to brief the IT secretary, the prime minister's office on what that policy is, what
But
the
all this comes
implications.
from the product folks, right? It comes to you, and then you interact with.
We discuss it. We discuss it. They're asking for our advice. We're the ones talking to government. We're like, how would the Indian government react to this? We're in the room with legal and compliance and say, is this something that the law currently would allow? What would need to change for us to enable this? So, we are the first port of call for any team within Google who has any interface with policy, law, or regulation. They're asking us for advice. We're giving them opinion. Where constantly, like, you're in one day, I might be at the Ministry of External Affairs, the Prime Minister's office, the Principal Scientific Advisor's office, Home Ministry, and you're doing these 5 meetings just to get one small opinion about whether this product launch makes sense or not.
Right.
And it's so important to do, right? And it's not unique to Google, of course. I'll give you an example of when the importance of this. Coinbase, when they kind of came to India, they wanted to allow UPI recharges to make crypto transactions, right, in India after they'd launched. And the CEO, Brian Armstrong, came to India, announced this, right? You can, UPI for crypto transactions, big kind of press conference release, and they hadn't briefed the regulator. And so RBI was very upset, and essentially the next day they said, you have to withdraw this. And so that's just an example of why, you really need to pre-brief, you need to be very close to government and how you kind of work through this. And so product teams are very reliant on people like us in the policy and government affairs team to help influence that and inform that decision.
I'm assuming that Coinbase ensured that they have a policy team immediately after that incident.
Look, I don't want to comment on anyone's policy. I don't know actually at that time. But so I mean, look, this is not a comment on Coinbase. Everyone,
totally understand.
In some way, this is the kind of learning experience you have for early policy teams. It's like, what could we have done better? And just this idea. And Google has a rich history of this, right? I wasn't the first person to join the policy team. So having done that for decades, they know that any small decision at a scale of 1 billion people, right? Google's one of those companies that has multiple products with billions of users. And in India, it's hundreds of millions of users, right? So one small policy change can impact so many people. Really want to work very closely with regulators and government on that.
So, Amlan, somebody wanting to get into tech policy as a career, what kind of skill set or mental models would be helpful for them?
Yeah, skill sets are
Yours
evolving.
was a very natural progression. You were a lawyer, and then you moved to PLR Chambers, then you sort of went to Google. So that was a very...
Yeah. I also don't... those are places to work at, but I'm actually much more interested in how people can build these skills irrespective of where they are, right? You can point to my progression, say, oh, you went to the best law school, you went to the best law firm. It's actually not about that at all. I work with my associates right now. I'm independent. They come from all kinds of schools, all kinds of backgrounds, but I'm really looking for some foundational skills, right? And it's things like logical reasoning, writing, being able to research well, being able to apply legal concepts to the fact situation, argue and debate, defend their opinion. So, you mentioned mental models. I'm kind of glad you do that, because I think that's a better framing for me, how someone's able to approach a problem. What is that framework that they bring to the table when we're discussing a new problem? And really what I'm looking for more these days, because I'm not a lawyer in that strict sense, I'm more focused on public policy, which is inherently interdisciplinary. So your mental models, your frameworks, your skills need to cut across disciplines. Right. And so at least over the course of my decade plus of working in this space, I've tried to cultivate mental models across different disciplines, right? So let me give you a few examples. Just, I think starting off, anytime I get a problem from a client, from the government, my own kind of research question I'm exploring, I start with first principles. Okay. And this is, technologists use this, people across different disciplines use this, is break down the problem to its most basic essentials and analyze it from that perspective, right? So I use this all the time. If you're getting a technology problem, you're like, okay, what is the underlying technology issue here? that's being disputed or being considered, what's the legal principle that's at stake. And then when you have it down to the most essential elements, you're able to analyze it better, right? Legal, right? Legal principles, you went to law school. I'm sure you've heard of this acronym called IRAC. Um, Issue, rule, analysis, conclusion.
Okay.
It's like a mental model I use. It's like
Got
apply
it, yeah.
IRAC. So here are the facts, break that down to the 10% most essential facts. What's the issue? So that's the I. And then if it's a legal problem, it's like, what's the law that applies here, right? Is it a civil issue? Is it a criminal issue?
Correct.
In the technical context, I'm like, what are the laws that might apply? Is it a privacy issue? Is it a consumer protection issue?
You're
mapping it to specific laws, and that's the R. So identifying the right law. And you know this, and anyone who's new to law will say, do I need to know all the laws by heart? Of course not. Yeah, we've never been asked to memorize all of the different Bear Acts.
Right.
You have them available. You need to know where to go.
You need to know what to check.
Yeah. And then you have to be able to identify the right rule. So that's the R.
Correct.
Then A is the analysis, is applying the rule to the fact situation, right? So if this were to happen, this is the law, what would a judge say or what would a regulator say? And that's the analysis. And then you conclude with a very specific opinion. So someone who's able to do this, very quickly, intuitively, I really appreciate that skill, right?
Okay.
So that's another example, from economics, probability theory, trade-offs. These are things you use in public policy very often. Trade-offs, obviously, privacy and convenience, national security, and, like encryption would be national security and privacy. Any use of like a bot that asks for chatbot that asks for more data from you is like privacy versus some convenience. So you want to be able to analyze these trade-offs. Probability theory. What's the probability? I mean, internally at Google, I had to do this a lot, which is they'd ask you, what's the likelihood that this particular bill will pass with this particular provision in the next 6 months?
What's this probability theory? Is it like game theory or something?
No, it's just you have some available information. How do you reduce that to a number that makes sense objectively to people who are not intimately aware of?
How would you arrive at this number?
That's the skill.
Okay.
It's a combination of things. It's like you have to understand what that spectrum looks like, right? Like just these phrases like very unlikely, likely, probable, possible, likely, highly likely, impossible. Like they mean very specific things. And when you use that in a memo internally to a senior executive like Sundar, they care about these words, right? Because a lot, like billions of dollars of investment potentially ride on these things. So they're high stakes, but that's the skill. I'm looking for someone to say, actually, it's highly unlikely that they will do this. And that means I'm not going to go to that road, right? But if they say it's unlikely, it's worth taking a risk. And people use these words very casually. So I'm looking for, when I'm hiring, I look for someone who understands probability theory, is able to explain their thinking, is able to take different facts. And why, you ask, like, why would you say one over the other? Is I met a government official. I saw their response to a certain, legal issue. They nodded in a way. I was able to corroborate that with 3 more government officials. I did some research on how other countries have, dealt with the situation. And so I arrived at an independent opinion that it is quite probable that, X decision will be made. And that's what I would relay.
Okay. So Amlan, after working at top tier law firms and then a big tech company like Google, you decide to go independent. So what were some of the trade-offs that you had to think through before wanting to practice independently or work as an independent consultant?
Look, it's so subjective. Let me ask you that. Why have you decided to do this? I'd be curious to know, actually, since this is a conversation.
So see, I have been a consumer of podcasts for a very long time, right? And I think it sort of became a very... something that I would spend a lot of time during the COVID time, watching a lot of podcasts. So I've been watching it for the last maybe 7-8 years, more as a consumer. Sure. And suddenly, I don't know, this year, for some reason, I felt like there are very few podcasts which kind of look at the intersection of law and technology or law as a niche. I did my research and I figured there are very few across the globe as well. There are a few, but they're very technical. Sure. Extremely technical. So I wanted to do something where, people can have access to law stuff, but it's not so technical that it's boring.
Sure.
So I think it's basically a love for podcast. Yeah. And I felt I could possibly make a contribution in this sort of field. Sure. Just talking to people I know. And I realized I have such a big network of people that I know who are doing such excellent work like
Yeah.
you,
Oh,
that I
thank
can
you.
actually have a conversation with these people, and there might be people who would want to listen.
Sure.
Right? So I think that's basically
Yeah.
what sort of led to my decision to do this podcast.
This is great. I should say, like, for people not in the room, it's very professionally done, and congrats to you for
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Thank you.
And going on this journey is, I'm sure, intimidating in some ways. It's new, but you're doing a great job. So keep at it.
Thank you.
If I can ask you a follow up, because people maybe listening to this would want to know. You said you have a good network where you're able to invite interesting guests. I'm sure
Probably network is not the right word. It's just say friends.
I think networks is the perfect word, and
Okay.
people would be, I think, curious. Your listeners would be curious to know how you built that. What do you think? Like, it's that skill set question you asked me. Do you think it's something you intentionally cultivated? What helped you? Because what, I think we met more than a decade ago.
Correct.
You were just pinging. You sent me an email. I
Yeah.
replied pretty instantly.
Correct.
So what do you think that took, and why do you think you were able to cultivate that network?
See, I think it's happening naturally, right? Since I've always been interested in law and technology, I kind of know the people who are kind of active in that field. So I think one very good thing about social media is you kind of know what people are doing. So it kind of pops up and you know what people are working on, things like
Right.
that, right? Did I intentionally sort of cultivate this? Did I have a skill set for this? I would say it all happened organically. Primarily my Nalsar network, and then I went to Berkeley. I studied there, so
Right.
people there as well, international friends.
Sure.
So, and I worked at Electronic Frontier Foundation for a year in
Yeah.
SF. So
Lovely EFI.
those folks as well. And the last 10, 15 years, I've been, again, working in startups, in-house legal counsel, so
Yeah.
that as well. So that, when you work in a company, it's not just lawyers that you're interacting with, right? You're also interacting with the leadership, the product team, the business team. So you get to meet a lot more people from different disciplines, founders and folks like that. So I think that's what kind of led to this
Sure.
network of people that I know of.
Yeah.
And I think they're at the age group where everybody seems to have like worked for 10, 15 plus years, and they're at a place where they can actually talk about their journey. So that sort of kind of led me to wanting to start this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's organic. Yeah, I don't think you could have anticipated back then you're gonna have these people on a podcast. So it was just a curiosity. So this natural curiosity I think is really important and interesting, especially in this field. You can be chasing the next thing. If you have there's a fundamental curiosity, like it seems like you did with tech law, and now with like media, you're consuming this, now you want to produce it. Those are, I think, the skills that help you find the next step in your career journey. So I just want people to kind of maybe listen to that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I know you had a question for me. I forgot I was asking you.
Yeah, I was talking about what made you decide to go independent. Yeah.
Sure. Having worked now with law firms, in policy, at a tech company, I thought the next logical progression for me was to not just advise on policy or law and not just advocate for law and policy, but to really help shape it and draft it. I felt like I'd built up enough personal experience myself, right? Intimately connecting with these technologies, with people who are affected by these technologies, that I had a worldview of what the law and policy for India, at least, should be in relation to technology. And I know that might sound like hubris, but if you go back to my story from earlier on in this conversation, I knew that a kid in Bangalore who makes a 3-minute video, a tribute video for his friend who had just passed away, and was seen by few thousand people. It helped them connect with this memory of this person who's with us no longer. Was asked to take this video down. There's something not right about it, and the law needed to reflect that. And so, after doing this for more than a decade, I thought I want to be in that room, helping shape that policy. And so I decided I want to have an independent point of view. I don't want to represent a company. I don't want to be advising a client. Just wanted to have a sense of what does Amlan think about this issue, and can I work with the right people who are working on this in the most impactful way to ensure that we're aligned, if we're aligned on what that policy should be, to actually make that happen.
Okay. So just to go back to that, where does the law stand on that today in Amlan with respect to YouTube?
Yeah, so
Copyright.
fair use, fair dealing is actually become much more I think, rationalized. People understand that there are transformative uses of smaller pieces of content, remakes, culture, and so on. But you'll see it's actually very relevant right now in the AI context, right? Which is how can AI companies use copyright data, copyrighted data to train their large language models,
Right.
and you'll see that. So there isn't one moment in which you can say this is what the law is and will be. It's like constantly evolving, right? So maybe to answer that question of in my case, what would happen? I think it would be allowed, and it's actually as much a technical question as it's a legal question. Here's my theory for why my video was taken down. I actually took the pains to identify the songs I was using. So I said simple attribution, right? Like I used 30 seconds of this Led Zeppelin song, 50 seconds of whatever, and I think it was just a bot that some music publisher had used to say if anyone mentions these songs in their description, take it down.
Okay.
They're not actually doing an analysis of how long was this used, is this transformative use, non-commercial. And so that was just an outdated technology. And I don't, of course, by the way, I've worked at Google and YouTube, right? Think about the arc.
Correct,
I actually
correct.
worked inside this company on these
Right.
contents. So it's a full journey. And it wasn't planned, of course. It wasn't like I'm going to go into Google and change this policy. But it so happened that I obviously got aware. I'm working with these teams. I'm shaping these policies inside Google, outside with government. And so I think it was just about updating that technology to say, okay, now we know that this perhaps is a song used, and so they have this thing called Content ID, which is people can look it up, a very advanced technology that Google uses to identify copyrighted content, make a determination. There's a lot more advanced in the legal regime as well. There's this copyright notice and takedown system. Do you take it down immediately, or do you have an ability to keep it up? Defend your position, right? And then only if there's a court order that comes in do you need to take it down. So this is what the copyright rules right now say in India, right? Rule 75 of the copyright rules. In the Indian context, at least, there's the system. It needs to be backed by a court order for it to stay down. This is all evolving from the DMCA, which was the US copyright law regime, which is kind of what we're all inspired by. So I think there's been an evolution on the technology side, on the legal side, but that's not the end of the road, right? Like with this new discussion, this debate around AI and copyright, models training on copyrighted content, I think we haven't heard the end of it. So I'm still engaged and curious to still be involved in discussing and shaping these debates.
Right. I think even now I hear people saying that the Google system is not perfect. It's evolving, right? There are these takedowns and then people appeal, it's not heard and things like that because it's still automated. It's not like a human sitting and doing this, right? So I think, it's evolving. So Amlan, we have the India AI Summit coming up in Feb 2026. And so I want to focus a bit on the work you've been doing in the AI governance and policy space.
Sure.
You were very closely involved with drafting the AI governance guidelines, which was a government-led process. So for people who do not know, I actually started my career as a legal and policy associate with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in their trade policy division. So I have had my share of working with the government. And in some ways, I was actually pleasantly surprised. So tell us a bit about how was your experience working with the government?
Yeah, so I'll tell you first thing, exactly echo what your sentiment is. Not so much pleasantly surprised that because I'd worked with government officials through my career. I wouldn't say it was much of a surprise, but I just want to, put it on record that some of the smartest people I've met are in government.
Yeah.
And, that's not surprising at all. India has the most difficult entrance exam for civil servants, right? The UPSC. It's crazy, a number of people who try and apply for it, the number of interviews. So when I talk to an IAS officer about an issue involving tech, which is not even their specialization, the kind of grounding with which they're able to receive that information, the ability to look at, like I said, different approaches, different disciplines, and come up with a policy solution is incredible. So, and with these guidelines, what my experience was exactly that, right? It's a mix of academics, government officials, really smart people who've worked in this space a lot. I said earlier on how I'm very keen to work with people who are doing the most impactful work on AI in India, and this was that group of people, right? 10 people across these different disciplines.
Okay.
And I think for me the biggest learning was how do you take different viewpoints, because not 10 people will never agree on the same thing, arrive at something that makes sense in the context of the trade-offs you've decided to make, right? So it's really about, here are the trade-offs. Are you able to quantify them in some way? Are you able to then agree that this is the position we should take? And then for everyone to kind of arrive at a consensus view, because you eventually do want a consensus. You don't want these guidelines didn't have any dissenting notes. Everyone kind of signed off on this. So for me, that process of really debating an issue, thinking through the trade-offs, putting that together into a document for national consumption to be implemented at the national level, with the consensus view of everyone in that committee, was something that for me was a new and interesting process.
Great. So for someone who has not gone through this, AI governance guidelines, any key recommendations that came out of this?
Yeah, so it's across 6 pillars. So I would recommend people kind of read that. But I would say high level, and I've written on my blog this piece reflecting on the process and commenting on what I think are the 3 unique features of this. Right, one is that the global view is that there are different approaches to governance and regulation and so on. But we decided very early on that we wanted to take an approach to governance that's not focused on regulation, right? This is not a regulatory approach. It's a governance guideline. And so we wanted to take an expansive view of that. And so it's not just about regulation and risk mitigation, which is important and a core area of interest for me. I've written a lot of papers on this, but as much about, something like capacity building. It's like, how can we educate, the common person about what the risks and opportunities and capabilities of AI are? And similarly with public sector officials who are creating these policies, right? So big focus on capacity building, big focus on adoption and infrastructure development and diffusion of this technology. So it's really a expansive, holistic view of governance. So I'd say that's one.
Okay.
2 is that, this is real, like I said, there are lots of different governments and countries that have taken different approaches. This is a governance framework that's built from the ground up, keeping India in mind and what India's objectives are, right? India wants to use AI for development. And so you need to have a governance framework that's keeping in mind those specific needs, right? Or if it is about risk mitigation, it's about, it's not the same kind of concerns that the EU has in terms of risks, right? We have very unique risks around, let's say, caste bias or child safety or women, safety. So you want to think about it in the context of what India's specific, AI related risks are, right? So, we need to think about it from an India perspective. I would say that's 2. And the third is really to think about this as an evolving framework, right? Because the technology is evolving so fast. I have been working on tech I haven't seen a technology rapidly iterate in the way that I'm seeing with AI, right? So you need to have a governance framework that's flexible, that's agile, right? And it's one thing to just say that, but then the words that you use, right, the framework that you use, the structure in which it's presented really lends itself to iterative approaches as new evidence comes in. You reclassify risk classification frameworks. You focus more on one thing than the other. You neutralize or you generalize definitions for how you describe a certain thing. And I think that's the approach we've taken as well. So I'd say these are 3, for me at least, unique characteristics of the
Yeah, I have a follow-up on that, Amlan. So I think you kind of mentioned it in passing. So I think when we look at the global governance approaches to AI, right? So primarily we have the EU and the US. And how does the India approach sort of differ from these 2? And are we taking the right approach at this point in time?
Yeah, right approach remains to be remains to be seen. I think it'll be a few years before we know that. But yeah, there's the EU, and actually, I don't want to single out the EU because EU I think gets a lot of bad press for being very regulation heavy. I actually don't see EU being isolated in that way. Like China, right? People don't like China, for example, has very specific prescriptive rules on how AI should be governed, especially around Gen AI, especially around generative AI, especially around how certain sectoral applications are from a cybersecurity perspective. So, the EU and China, I would say, are one kind of approach, but there's lots of countries in Southeast Asia as well, right? Like, which have statutory laws. So there's a big grouping of countries that are thinking about AI regulation a certain way. And then, of course, there's the US, which is an extreme, which the way I describe it is they went from low regulation to no regulation. So real free markets, laissez-faire approach. And then I think, India and several other countries are somewhere in the middle, right? Some people call this the third way, but it's really a balanced approach. And again, like it's one thing to say, we're balanced. Everyone says we're balanced. Like other than maybe the US, which is very explicit about their approach. Everyone, even on the EU side, on the Southeast Asian countries I mentioned, like Korea and Japan, they're all saying we're balanced. So it's really about, on that balance, where that spectrum, where do you lie? And it's really based on the evidence on the ground for your specific socio-cultural context. Are you able to balance, these competing factors, right? And I just want to mention one point here, and I think this is actually where I want to take a step back and say, despite these differences in these global approaches, I want us all to agree on one thing, right? And this is just my personal opinion. This is not an official position. Is I actually don't see them as a trade-off or a binary, right?
Okay.
On some technical questions, yes, you might, if you are trying to prioritize privacy, there might be some loss of performance, right, in an AI system. But overall, I think you can have both innovation and trust, right? There's not actually a trade-off that needs to be made. You can build really highly innovative advanced systems that have trust and reliability and performance and safety and accuracy built into that system. And I think that's where actually potentially India can be very unique, which is to say we want to think about these systems from the ground up as being both innovative and safe and trusted. And so there is this idea of a techno-legal approach, which you might be familiar with. It's what the DPI kind of digital public infrastructure approach is, right? If you don't have a law, and we didn't have a privacy law for the longest time, is there a way that we can embed principles like collection limitation, purpose limitation, right, notice and consent into the underlying technology itself? And that's what the UPI approach is. That's what the account aggregator approach is that even if we don't have a statutory law, in any transaction involving financial data, there is notice and consent, there is purpose limitation, there is collection limitation, and this is embedded into the design of the technology itself. So this is perhaps one unique way in which India is approaching this. Again, is this the right approach? I don't know. We'll see.
So I just want to sort of probe more into this, right? On one side, I think you always have these tech pros saying that, hey, don't have too much regulation, you're going to curtail innovation. I mean, that's the standard sort of argument you constantly hear.
Yeah.
On the other side, you're also saying that, hey, let's not have this strict regulation, but then you have this techno-legal approach where these principles are embedded into the technology. Now, for that to be embedded into the technology, where do these guidelines come from? Where is it coming from? Where does it become a standard?
Yeah.
Something needs to push it, right?
Yeah, good question. By the way, am I responding as the tech pro? Is that tech
No,
pro?
you are not. In fact, I am just bringing this argument because it's the most common thing that happens generally.
Of course. No, I was just wondering if am I supposed to be defending the tech proposition?
No, I'm asking your perspective on this. You could as well defend them. I don't.
I defend them, yeah. No, I definitely don't take that view. It's been very clear, I don't think it's a trade-off. I think you can do both and we should do both.
Okay.
I think obviously there are cases where hyper-regulation in certain sectors, like we talked about the drone example, right?
Yeah.
Hyper-regulation can inhibit and stifle innovation. So that's definitely the case.
That was more like no regulation. It was like just a blanket sort of...
Exactly, right? You want smart, balanced, measured regulation. A ban almost never works, right? I actually think, we should have, TikTok should be legal. You don't want to ban it, but there are very specific issues around, addiction and child safety that you want to address. A ban, I think, never makes sense, right? And this is, by the way, there are larger geopolitical questions with TikTok, which maybe we can get into later.
Yeah.
But now to your question, right? So yes, we need balanced approach. We need to do both. Where do these principles come from? I think is a really important question. And I would actually say the design of these systems actually need to be much more open and transparent. It's like who's designing these protocols for our underlying digital public infrastructure in India, whether it's in the financial system or whether it's in an agricultural system or healthcare. I think we need to have much more community participation, right? A small group of technologists can't be deciding this. We need to have sociologists in the room. We need to have economists in the room. We need to have lawyers in the room. And so I don't know that, especially in the design of some of these systems, we have that multi-stakeholder approach in the open and transparent approach that I would want. Two is where do these standards come from? I think, again, that will inform how these standards are developed. And then that becomes, diffused through the entire ecosystem. But I do want to say, and this is my personal view again, I don't think it ends with standards. It should end with standards or technology-enabled principles at all. There is definitely a need for laws, right, and regulation itself, right? And so, for example, I'll give you an example which I personally believe in, right? Data portability, right? This idea that you want to be able to take your data from one app or one service or one platform to another, port that data as such so that it's seamlessly accessible to you on this new platform. If you want to switch for whatever reason, they increase their price, you don't like their privacy policy, whatever it is. Now, this is something that can be enabled by technology, right? And there are platforms and there are app services like Google that does this called Google Takeout. So that's a technology designed system that embeds this principle of data portability. But what I believe is really important is that you want to have a right to data portability. I want a legal right where under the Data Protection Act, they say that if this platform denies me this request, I'm able to go to a regulator and say, compensation, fine, whatever it is, right?
Correct.
So there are some specific issues for which you want both the right as an individual and an obligation on the platform to do that. And that cannot happen just through standards or technology. That needs to be in the law. So I think there's room for industry self-regulation. I think there's room for standards. I think there's a need also for rights and obligation in law.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Amlan, you're working on a paper on AI agents and governance. So I want to understand a bit about that. So for people who are not familiar with the concept of AI agents, what are AI agents? What kind of governance issues do they raise?
Sure, yeah. Look, I'm really excited about this concept of agents. Agents are not new. We've had agents for several decades. It's like AI, right? It's been around from the 1950s. What's I think really unique.
Did we have AI agents earlier as well?
Yeah, people would like the people training these models back from the 1960s, 70s were calling them agents as well, right?
Okay.
They're doing something. Like think about what agents mean. Like as lawyers.
So would you even call your chatbot agent?
I'll tell you why. We can start calling them agents now, right? In specific sense, right? An agent, like in the legal concept, you have a legal audience as well, right? The principal-agent relationship, it's someone acting on behalf of another. It's a simple kind of. What's actually constraining agents from really being considered agents now is their ability to actually do that thing, which is perform that action on behalf of someone, right? So in the context of a chatbot, if I can go on any of these chatbots and say, hey, make that financial transaction, right? So tell me where I should go. I'm planning a trip to Turkey. What's the 3-day agenda? We do all of this right now, right? Now they're like, here's what you should do. I found a great flight on ClearTrip. Now what a true agent will do is have the tools to be able to go have access to your UPI app, Google Pay app, and execute that transaction and then email you because it has access to your Gmail the ticket, right? Yeah. Which is what the next evolution of chatbots are now. So I think of it like to describe it like you asked me to define. I wouldn't define it, but I'll describe it in like 4 ways, right? They have one, increasing capabilities that are coming from these large language models and chatbots, right? Reasoning, planning, some people call it thinking. I have some objections to that, right? But the ability to reason, plan, analyze, summarize. So all of these capabilities map to autonomy, increasing autonomy. They're able to do these things autonomously rather than me dictate each thing, right? They're able to, if I say plan a 5-day itinerary, they're able to look at my calendar, see what my free dates are, right? And, autonomously act on these. 3 is access to data, right? Increasingly these agents, they're not API calls, right? So for people like a technical audience, like an API call will be just be able to access this particular set of data points from this particular service. This goes much beyond that. They are able to, let's say at the OS level, access every app on your phone, right? So they're able, like if Siri were an agent, they would have access to everything on your iPhone. So they can see your calendar, they can see your Gmail, they can see your your past bookings, they can understand your preferences. So it's really about having systems access to have contextual understanding. And then finally is to actually act and influence the environment, right? And currently they're all mostly in the digital realm, but can they actually take actions on the World Wide Web, within your browser, within your email service provider? But increasingly in the future, and I don't think too far in the future, in the next 5 to 10 years, actually influence the physical environment. So really you're thinking about integrating agents with robots, right? So you give them a task and they're able to perform these actions and influence and interact with the physical environment. So, these are 4 characteristics that I think very unique to agents, and they present obviously very unique, novel governance challenges.
Yeah. Do you think the current law is equipped to deal with these? I can see the parallels. I mean, basically, if you're looking at the agency law, fine, it does apply here. What about instances where the agent takes a decision on behalf of you autonomously and errs there? What happens then? The liability falls on the person who has authorized it to do it?
Great example, right? And you've identified 2 of those things, which, by the way, people need to wrap their head around that this will happen, right? It's called basically goal-directedness, like deciding the objective itself is something that the agent decides, right? There's one thing to say, hey, help plan my birthday. It's another thing for the agent to know that your birthday is, on November 5th. and to decide that for your birthday you definitely want to restock your food and beverages, order these snacks, take these decisions autonomously. And obviously somewhere at the back end you have authorized them to do that, right? Like at a very high level, you're like, if you think there's a decision to be made that's in my interest at a high level, make that decision. So you've authorized at a very high level. But that's very different from you going onto a chatbot and saying, hey, order party supplies for my birthday party. And this, by the way, technically they have these capabilities. Through my research, I've found out it's not a technical constraint. These agents are able to create their own objectives, right? Define their own objective functions and perform these actions, provided they have access to the right tools, right? So the question or situation you've described is very likely to happen in the next few years. You're talking about who's liable. I feel like that's an important question, but there's so many steps even preceding that, right? What systems do they have access to, right? Are they able to access all of your data in perpetuity, infinitely, right? Are you able to do that? What are the kind of guardrails and constraints you want to add to that? Important privacy, security, governance question. I think cybersecurity and privacy will be huge in the context of AI. Two is this question of value alignment, right? Which is fundamental to AI governance, right? Which is the values of the AI and my values aligned, right? If do they want if they're performing like a shopping transaction, are they able to make an illegal transaction, right? Are they able to buy drugs or buy guns, right? These might even be my personal preferences, but the agent's values need to be aligned with my human values, with societal values, with larger kind of societal concerns. Are you impacting someone else? How so this value alignment question becomes really important, right, in the AI context. So and then third, obviously, this liability question: who's responsible? So I think very novel questions. But the way that I think about it is there are risks that are currently evident from generative AI technologies itself. A lot of these will manifest in agents and agentic AI. Some of these will be exacerbated by AI, by agentic AI, and then there will be some novel risks that we just have not even considered. And at least I'm trying to research this, and this paper should be out in the next few weeks.
Looking forward to that. So from our discussion on AI agents, I want to move towards AI companions. Have you watched the movie Her?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so that was released in 2013. Okay, and in less than a decade, we're almost living that reality. So ChatGPT came out in what, 2022? 22. November 2022.
Yeah.
So, and that was followed by, I think, Claude and Grok and all these. So basically, increasingly, these AI tools are being used for two things primarily, right? One is people are using it increasingly because it makes your life easier, it's efficient, you save a lot of time. And the other one is where people, I think there's this whole loneliness epidemic where people are increasingly interacting with their AI tool or companion, as you might call it as friend and companion, basically, confidant, right? So where do you draw that line between, say, usefulness and dependency? How do you see privacy and trust issues vis-a-vis these AI companions?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and something I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about, thinking about writing an essay on this. Firstly, let's define, like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? You just ask around. Some people are really shy about even talking about, how they use AI. Some people are like, I would never use it. Some people are very open about how they use it. So I think we need to start about what's the current practices around
ground
usage,
reality
right?
of,
And so if you, using this word companion, and I just want to break down what that means, right? What is a companion, right? And it's a spectrum, right? Because some people are like, oh, a companion, I would never be in a relationship with my chatbot, right? Because, and using this example of Her, and that's what happens. Sorry, spoiler alert. That's I mean, it's in the teaser itself, but that's the thesis for Her, right? That's the plot of Her. It's a relationship with this chatbot, but that's on the extreme of what a companion is. I'm saying let's start much closer to the other end, which is a companion is someone who just think about like a friend, closer to a friend, someone who understands you. So they have all of this contextual information about you. And if you just think about like what we were just talking about with agents, if they have access to, all of your kind of emails, your calendar, you're talking to them constantly.
Correct.
Of course, they have an intimate
like a
understanding
sounding
of
board,
you. They know who you are. And that's a good companion. Second, a companion is someone who's available, right? Like you want someone who's able to get, so I give the example of, sometimes I'll watch a movie late at night, it's 2 a.m. by the time I come home. Some really long Bollywood movies end at 2 a.m. So, at 2 a.m.
Was it Durandar?
Maybe. But at 2 a.m., I want to be able to have a quick conversation with a friend about how I felt about this
About the
movie.
movie. Yeah.
Right? And by the way, and this is the third element of what I think a good companion is a very knowledgeable person, or at least I like to be in the company of people who are smarter than me.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what an AI chatbot is, right?
Correct.
Because they have access to the world's information. So I am able to ask this chatbot about, some trivia about this movie, like obviously the factual stuff like who directed this, but more deep introspective questions like, hey, I felt this way about, let's talk about her, right? Let's get meta. It's like, hey, this movie made me feel like this guy maybe shouldn't have trusted this chatbot, right? What do you think? And like they're able to do this meta, and it's like anyone who's played around is like, wow, this chatbot is able to reflect on its own experience as a chatbot. And that's an interesting, useful conversation. And so let's establish that, companions is not a relationship. They're a companion, right? And they're useful, they're interesting in different environments at different times. They know you. And so I think that is really very likely to happen in larger numbers, right? If you see the data, it's like 1 in 4 school kids in the US are interacting with them as companions or know someone who does. So that's the point on like, this is the reality. It's very likely to happen. That's why I'm interested in this question. 2 is this question of trust. And here's really where I, want to really think about what this means for society and me as an individual. Because, it seems like they're trustworthy, but we're trusting them as if they were human companions. And that's the problem, right? We're divulging our deepest, darkest secrets to them in ways that we would confide in our closest friends.
You know what? I'll just go ahead and say something else.
Yeah?
You may not even confide certain things with your friends and family, which you might with the AI.
Exactly.
So you're going a step ahead, actually.
In some ways you are. And, that's the reality. Let's just deal with what's the reality before we talk about whether this is right or wrong, right? And this is happening. And why does that happen is the question I'm interested in. And I've done this like research, right? It's because, they're not judgmental, right?
Exactly.
Like sometimes you don't go to a friend because like they're going to tell me to do this or not to do this. So sometimes, and this is really where you want to start that distinction between what a companion, an AI companion is a human companion, and you will want both. This is my prediction for the future. The reason you would want a human companion is an AI companion has no subjective experience, right? So when I want from a companion, I'm asking them like a relationship advice question, they will never be able to give me an advice based on their own relationship experience. But my friend's like, hey, I was in this relationship, was my experience, I know you, maybe you should do this. And so, that's that distinction. But sometimes, like you said, you don't want, you go to a professional like a therapist because it's not your friend. It's a professional that has access, that has studied this, has access to all of the world's literature on how to deal with this particular issue with cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever it is. And so you might divulge a secret for non-judgmental just receptiveness. So I think the future is just we're going to have both AI companions, and of course we're going to have human companions. They will serve different interests. There's this question of trust where we're trusting them more on some things in ways maybe we shouldn't. We should be able to trust them more, provided they have these technical policy regulatory guardrails. But fundamentally, and there's this cybersecurity expert called Bruce Neer who talks about this, is sometimes, we might get very intimately close to a companion, but that's what he calls a category error, right? Because we're treating them as friends when what they really are is a service, right? And so really what we need to keep in mind is these are chatbots, but they're designed by companies. And, many of these are for-profit, companies. And so keep in mind, right? Like there is definitely a lot of, trade-offs happening here. So don't make that category. These are not your friends. These are services.
Correct.
And I do think in the future, we will have companions that are built by non-profit organizations, by governments perhaps, which are meant not to be commercialized and maybe have a fiduciary relationship with you. And I'm actually very keen to help inform that process of what these companions of the future could look like.
Right. See, I'm very comfortable with talking to a chatbot, very neutral personality. That's fine with me. But the minute there was this personality with personality traits, which was trying to make you spend more time on the app, it seemed like, oh my God, what's happening here?
Yeah. They call this the uncanny valley. It's like, if you create a robot, it looks like a robot, feels like a robot, that's great, people feel comfortable. As soon as it gets closer to looking like a human, right? Like when robots look very human-like, people
humanoid,
get, humanoid, right? It gets very uncomfortable. They have these personality traits, like what's happening here? So it's called the uncanny valley. As you go more closer to the valley, people get, so that's an interesting insight. So thanks for sharing that. I also think, this question. Sorry, what, did you have a question?
No, I think it was more like I was giving you the context as to, it doesn't seem very far-fetched, this whole AI companion
the
thing with
personality
this
thing.
personality traits
Yeah.
and very specific characteristics, voice modulations. And initially I was like, who are going to be the takers? But there were people on X using it and,
Okay.
sharing their experiences. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. Replica, again, like, you can see like I was talking about, different contexts and situations in which I would use a chatbot. I can imagine that you would want different personalities, right? You would want a fun, engaging, interesting personality to talk about movies and film and food and art. Maybe you want a very professional, like, therapist.
There are those.
So I can see that. But you're getting into something really interesting, because I was listening to an interview with one of these AI lab kind of founders, and there's this whole quest to create these machines that think, right? So you're trying to replicate the brain with neural networks and so on, and that seems to be the current journey. The question is, do you want to replicate the heart? Right, essentially, because that's what makes us human. And I think that's just an open question. And this, I'm not going to name the founder, but they were like, it's a question like, can we? Maybe it's a technical challenge, but we're trying to do that with the brain, and we're getting somewhere. They're not human brains; they can't think like humans, but they can think in some ways. Same for hearts, personalities. Maybe we'll make them replicate some personality traits. But I think the fundamental question with all of this is not can we, but should we? Do we want companions to be more human-like just because we can? And so we were talking earlier about agents, right? And what could be unique and new, and from a governance perspective, I think foundationally we might need to get to a place where agents disclose that they're agents, right? It's very important. Like if they're particularly human-like, they're able to reason like humans. They have the brains of humans. They have the hearts of humans, personality of humans. I'm on the phone talking to someone. It's a customer service bot. And I think I'm talking to a human. And I think there might be a law necessary for them to disclose that I'm an AI. And we're seeing this, and the harm is very evident. Like, let me not mince my words here. Like a teenager died by suicide because a chatbot did not have adequate guardrails to prevent that from happening, right? So should that chatbot have said, hey, I'm a chatbot, I cannot help you, please seek medical opinion, please speak to your family? I think we're at a point where that's just going to have to be mandatory.
So, Amlan, I want to zoom out here for a bit and then ask you a question around AI and the path towards AGI. So there's a lot of differing views on AGI. Some folks say it'll take at least 5 to 10 years before we get there. And there are other folks who are saying, hey, it's right around the corner. So on one hand, you have folks like Geoffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, who are actually called the godfathers of AI, modern AI. One is about existential risks, mass unemployment, and also stating that we're not investing enough in AI safety and guardrails, right? On the other hand, the AI race is not showing any signs of slowing down between companies, between countries, whether it's US, China. So when, and also you hear these very positive narratives about how people don't have to worry about these mass job, displacement, because at some point you're going to have this universal high income, everything is going to be taken care of, and people don't even have to save for their retirement. I mean, this is the kind of conversation that's coming from Silicon Valley. So when you're looking at all of this, what does a country like India, with its own developmental and economic concerns, make sense of all of this? What should we be focusing on without getting lost in this?
Yeah. No, it's a good, important question. And I'll caveat, look, I'm no fortune teller. I don't know when what.
No, it's all about your opinion.
It's my
what
opinion.
You thought. Yeah.
Great. No, with that caveat, then I'm more comfortable kind of sharing. So let me start with, this concept of AGI. Obviously, anyone listening will be like, wait, what do they even mean? So AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And even everyone who's aware of it knows that this is a very poorly defined or underdefined term.
Right.
But for the sake of this conversation, let me offer a definition. It's just, a advanced AI system that's able to perform cognitive tasks as well as most humans. Right? At a general level. That's what the G very matters, right? On most tasks, better than most humans, right? And why is that most tasks matters? Because it's a general thing. It's not an AI that plays chess really well or checkers really well, because we've already beyond that. It's a system that can do multiple tasks. You just give it a new task. It's trained on biology, but it's able to do a math task as a cognitive math task as well, right? Or maybe a legal task as well. It's not just for a specific domain, and the better than most or as good as most humans is because there will always be in some domain some exceptional genius,
Correct,
right?
correct.
And so if someone's like really good at math, like Albert Einstein, maybe the AI doesn't need to be at that level, or like you're a really good lawyer, maybe it doesn't need to be as good a lawyer as you, but better than most. So that's the working definition I want to work with. And so my at least thesis right now, based on kind of thinking on both the technical side and the policy side, is we will get here. It's get there. It's coming. And conservatively 10 years. And you were talking about probabilities earlier. Very likely in 10 years. Quite likely in 5 years.
Okay.
And possibly in the next 3 to 4 years.
Right.
Which means we need to be starting to think about this now, right? And so my sense is, you're asking about, on the safety side and its big, positive narrative. I think it's both. I think it will be the most transformative technology of our generation on the scale of, the Industrial Revolution. And it will have both positive and potential upside and downside, and it's up to us as a society to decide how you want to gear and prepare for it. And that's why I'm really interested in this question. I'm devoting the next 5 to 10 years of my life to study this, to make sure they're developed safely and for the benefit of people and humans and society, and for the environment as a whole, right? For the planet as a whole. So, you asked about India, and for a country like India, 1.4 billion people, very optimistic on AI. By the way, you'll keep seeing this on like a Stanford report on how people in the country perceive AI. You'll see a lot of negative sentiment in some countries like the US, but India is always up top. I think it's two things, right? One is they have seen traditionally technology really help promote economy and society, right? So the ITS service, for example, it created so many jobs for people, right? So there's all of that thinking around, okay, this is a past technology, future technology is likely to do the same for us, right? Second is, I think, the public narrative, right? The government has been very bullish on AI. It's this whole idea of digital India, it's this digital revolution, we have mobiles, connectivity, cheapest rates. So I think from a policy sense and a societal sense, India has just been very optimistic because technology has served its interest. And so, India's going into this entire AGI journey with that positive mindset. And I think that's fine. I think that's useful. I think you would get a lot of interesting use cases because we're optimistic about it. How do you apply it to solve a problem for the farmer on the ground, to help predict, the crop that they should grow, to maximize agricultural productivity, something in healthcare, and education. These are the kind of priority sectors. Governance for citizen service delivery, like with, integrating it with digital public infrastructure, perhaps. But I'm equally interested in not just the safety or governance piece, but what I think about as the national preparedness plan for AGI, right? If it is really at the scale of the Industrial Revolution, this can't be a group of 20 policy experts, getting together in Bangalore or Chennai or Delhi and talking about it, making a plan, and the government will look at it at some point in time. No, the government needs to get together. It's leading experts, right, across the Home Ministry, across the IT Ministry, across the Science and Technology Ministry, all led by the Prime Minister's office, to say, what does India's national preparedness plan for AGI in 2030 look like, right? Which is 5 years from now, possibly for 2035. We have a Viksit Bharat plan, by the way. We have a plan for India to be a developed nation in 2047. Shouldn't we have a plan for AGI by 2035?
Yeah.
And so, what should it entail is what we would obviously, I would need to think about. I'm doing some thinking on it, but, obviously a focus on research and development, a focus on questions of, social security, this job displacement issue you mentioned about, capacity building around that. National security is going to be huge if this is being used. I mean, there's this phrase by Dario Amodai, who's the CEO of Anthropic, and he says, if we do get to AGI, and he's obviously very bullish on it. Although, on timelines, I disagree with him on by a fraction, but I think he's right on most of this. He calls it a country of geniuses in a data center. That's what AGI is. Okay. You will have in one data center, wherever this model is hosted, and it won't just be one model, but it'll be like wherever this intelligence is, by whichever company and country that invests in it and has access to it and control over it, they will have access to a country of geniuses. It's like having, 50,000 not Albert Einstein's, because we talked about this, it doesn't have to be at that level, but PhD level students, like the best in astrophysics and biology and, arms development and in one data center.
Yeah.
And so India needs to think about the national security implications of this, right? What does this mean for national resilience,
Correct.
for self-sufficiency, for our defensive capabilities, for our ability to leapfrog other countries in areas like biology and chemistry and so on. So I'm very keen for India to think about a national preparedness plan for AGI, working right now for 2030, 2035.
In fact, I have a follow-up on that. I have this fundamental question around concentration of power. So if this advanced AI systems is concentrated in the hands of few companies, what will this mean for, say, future of state governance or even democracy?
Yeah. Oh gosh, no short answer to that. But I'm equally concerned about that, because if it is going to be, and it seems like we're moving towards a bipolar AI world right now, or a race at least. I'm not even going to name the countries.
Yes,
you can guess.
yeah.
But if it's these two countries that are going to have access to the most powerful AI technologies, what happens to the others, right? And so really, the way I present this conundrum is that, everybody wants AI to be developed and diffused. Nobody is saying don't develop it. Like there's obviously some people saying, it's problematic. Some scientists, technologists, Jeffrey Hinton and folks like that. Moratorium. I don't think the moratorium would work for geopolitical and reasons. I know humans are innately curious. Like if you say stop developing the iPhone, we're happy with the iPhone 15, 17, whatever we're at. It works pretty well. It's not going to work. Everyone, the engineers I want to make the 80, I want to make the camera sharper, I want to make the processor fast. And the same with AGI. People trying to solve important, useful technical issues around, continuous, like the AI should continuously learn from your context, right? It needs to understand the world, the physical interaction, not just so those technology problems are going to be solved by people working at the edge. So moratoriums don't work, right? So if it's continuous and everybody wants it to be adopted and diffused across all countries, I think the difference is there might be some countries that want to use AI diffusion for dominance, whereas some want AI diffusion for development. And the fundamental question for me is, these seem to be conflicting. Can we get some global agreement to ensure that they are not at odds, that AI is not being used for concentration of power, for dominance, to create new dependencies, which is how geopolitically the world has operated for centuries, but actually for equity, fairness, development in a way that actually benefits all of humanity.
That brings me to another question. So all of these AI frontier models are all developed by either US or China. So what happens to a country like India? I mean, is this a huge issue around security? I mean, you were talking about that. So how should India even look at this?
Yes, this is why the national preparedness plans are so important, national strategy. So we have articulated this. India has articulated this in the national AI mission, what the goals are. So I'll describe India's approach is like in 3 or 4 ways, right? One strategic objective is AI for inclusive development. This has come from Prime Minister Modi down, right? We don't want to build AI, frontier AI technologies for bragging rights, right? And maybe there's some countries like, we are at the cutting edge of it. We have the most advanced model. In India, we're like, oh, that's great. But, how is it impacting the lives of our people, right? And so, you mentioned this AI summit. It's coming up in India, Feb in New Delhi. It's called the AI Impact Summit because we want to apply AI for impact. And so that's one interesting way, right? India is not interested in the largest, most powerful technologies. It's AI systems that can be used for impacting people's lives.
Right.
So that's one. 2 is, again, AI needs to be localized for the specific socio-cultural context in which you're operating, right? And I've done a lot of research on AI in, South Asia, so in Nepal, in Bhutan, in Bangladesh, in Korea. I'm in Malaysia next week.
Okay.
I'm having conversations with the Korean government on what their approach is. It's just so localized to what they want and what they need. And so, based on my kind of research, I remember when I was at Google, we did this research. What India's focused on now is 3 things. With AI, it's voice, video, and vernacular. So it's multimodal because you want to talk into it, right, as opposed to kind of type into it. Video, obviously, you're seeing with the popularity of video. You're doing this video podcast. That's an example, but also vernacular, local language support. So I think India would focus a lot more on building models that support this. Voice first, language support across all official languages, 20 plus, and perhaps some understanding of video, to be able to, do certain types of use cases that are very focused on that.
Right. I think so. India's got its approach right. I think in a way it's very concerned about its development, right? But I'm just from a national and geopolitical perspective. I mean, the threat from China is looming large.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the threat according to you?
I mean, if it gets to AGI first,
Okay. What do you think would happen? Let's.
do you think they will? I
Yeah.
mean, considering the kind of intrusions that's been happening on the borders, do you think they're not going to use this for
Yeah.
creating intelligent weapons?
Intelligent. I want to just go back to the other question we're asking about mental models. I really like what we're doing here because the mental model here we're using is like a thought experiment. It's simulations, it's scenario.
Yeah, okay.
And that's so important. Like, policymakers need to do a lot more of this. It's like we've had this border incursion. There's using some types of technologies. Now advance that to AGI level technology. It's, drones, drone swarms. We're seeing this already in wars right now. But at the level of, better than any kind of humans, right? What does that mean, and is that a risk? Yeah, I'm not a national security expert. We'd have to get defense experts to kind of weigh in on that. I'm concerned more about what this means for human agency, right? For human empowerment. That AGI or AI is going to essentially nullify any meaning and purpose for humans. At least that's a question I can, like, as a lifelong student of philosophy and law and nature of the mind. I'm much more interested in what does a post AGI mean for the future of humans in terms of meaning and purpose.
I mean, that's the ideal. But when you consider human tendencies, there's always this race for dominance. So that's going to, as you pointed out, right? There's going to be this.
Or like you said, the idea that abundant for some and very scarce for others.
And sometimes I wonder, when people talk about this universal high income, I just wonder, is this transition going to be the same for, say, global south versus the developed countries? Maybe it's going to look very different.
Yeah, that's a question I think India is very well positioned to answer as a leading voice for the global south. And I think, you'll see at this AI Impact Summit that's going to be a key theme.
Okay, so just one last question before we move to the next segment. Where do you see these domestic initiatives like Sarvam AI fit into this bigger picture?
Yeah, so I mentioned, voice and Indic language, voice first. I think, some of these Indian model companies are well positioned and should be focusing on that. Prime Minister Modi just did a roundtable with 10 or 12 leading AI developers working on building foundation models for India. And I think they have a very clear objective, right? I know Prime Minister Modi mentioned very early on his vision, and it's a pretty inspiring vision. It's any farmer in any state can pick up his phone and talk in their own local language, say Rajasthani, about agriculture related question. And there could be a merchant or another farmer in really Odisha. In real time, being able to translate that, speak in their local language, and it's translated back to that. And that's the kind of seamless, beautiful, real-time technology that makes me so excited and interested in this place. So I'm excited for some of these companies to do that.
Okay. So, Amlan, we've had a lot of discussion on AI governance, AGI, what it means for the future of humanity. So I want to get back to something more human side of things, right? So when there's so much AI automation, what kind of human qualities or skills will become that much more important?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's $1 million question, right? Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Look, I think it's like 4 or 5 things. One is, as smart and cool and hip as these chatbots are, there's always something missing. And I think that's just human judgment or taste or whatever you want to call it. It's just something, you trust a friend to have really good taste in what you should wear, what you should eat. And as good as these guys, the anthropomorphism happening there.
Yes.
These chatbots, as good as they are at recommending something, they that human taste is going to be crucial, right? The other piece is just relationships. Like I said, they don't have subjective experience. They don't have relationships of their own. So building empathy, building the ability to listen well, be able to understand, human instinct, have your own gut instinct. They don't have gut instincts. I think that's going to be crucial. Anything that's physical, that's embodied, right? I think we're, maybe a decade away from really high advanced robotics technology where it's embodied. But till then, there are these digital artifacts, right? Like their software, it's soft. We're hard, we're built so resilient, we've survived so many billions of years of evolution. I think the fact is that it's why life performance I think will be so valuable and useful going down the line.
That community experience, right?
Experience, yeah. So I think it's going to be a combination of these things. Creativity, of course, they're creative, of course, chatbots, but something particularly personal. why do I still write, when there are chatbots? It's like, I know that I'm expressing a point of view, my subjective opinion, in a way that I care about, and maybe some other people care about too. And I think that never goes away. So, these are 4-5 things. And in a career, in a professional context, for any listeners, I think, I work in policy, but for a long time I still do work in, there's this term in the function called government relations. Right? It has the word relations in it. And, as much as they can, draft the memo, they can summarize the latest policy document, a chatbot cannot build a relationship with a government official, or with, the academic at IIT that I work with, or with the technologist I'm talking to about like what the future of AGI looks like. And so that relationships part of government relations, is, for me, I think what the differentiator would be.
So you said something about writing, and in your own journey as as a scholar, as a teacher, you also teach at NLS, and then as a policy thinker, how has writing helped you think better? And for people who struggle with writing, what is something that you would suggest?
Yeah, writing's been incredibly valuable. It's for me it's my most important instrument and tool.
Okay.
And I'm quoting Joan Didion here, right? She says, "I don't know what I think till I write." And for me, that's always been the case on any kind of legal policy issue. People ask me what I think. Maybe I'll offer an opinion. Sometimes I say I don't know, and then I go back and I think about it, and I at least write an outline. I have lots of unpublished drafts in my folders, but that process of putting, I'm going to say pen to paper, because I do actually use pen to paper. You actually write it? I write a lot of things by hand. I have a bunch of journals out and about.
Oh, you write on your iPad or?
Sometimes
or
that, but
paper.
If you really ask me about my process, I think it's like a 3 or 4 step. I always do like a mind map, or like just some kind of like a jotting of an outline. So that's always pen on hard paper.
Right.
And then by the way, this is new. I'm integrating this more and more. Like, use a chatbot, like almost like a conversational ideating companion. Here's what my outline is. Here what I'm thinking. Am I missing some argument?
Correct.
Like, what would someone say? Great for that. And then I kind of type out an outline. So then I'm on my desk. I use an iPad. And then I obviously write with a distraction-free kind of a software tool. So it's been really useful to articulate what I'm thinking, do the research, to put down exactly like the words really matter. And so I know what I think once I write. So from my time blogging, to now when I still write policy memos just for government as an internal draft, or an essay I publish on my blog every once in a while, or a paper I write, writing is for me the most important, valuable tool. Yeah, sorry, I realized I didn't answer your second question for someone who struggles to write.
Right, yeah.
A couple of ways to answer this. One is like it's a struggle for everyone, right? Like anyone who's written, so you're not alone in this. I just want everyone to know, like I struggle, like, writer's block, and, the procrastination and the fear and anxiety of putting something out that someone else might read. I would say one tip for me is just write for yourself, right? Audience of one, write what you would want to read, write knowing that you don't have to publish this, and if you feel comfortable writing it, then publish it. So that's been useful. Think of it as a journal note you're writing, just to clarify your own thinking.
Right.
2 is, at this point, there's no excuse of a blank sheet, because you can literally put 5 bullet points, and a chatbot, an AI system will just expand on that. I don't recommend it, but if you're struggling with something, just put something out, give it something back and forth, and then, figure out what that process looks like for you, where you're comfortable with it. And 3rd is, read. Like reading and writing just go hand in hand. I spend even today, like, 3-4 hours just reading, and in different forms, articles, and I'm not talking like on social media, like I'm not reading like whatever, doesn't count as reading,
right?
But like something long form, I subscribe to curated list of newsletters. I'm not on social media, so I'm not.
Is that a conscious choice not to be active on?
Yeah, but what do I mean by social media? Like Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. Yeah, I don't use these platforms.
You're on LinkedIn though.
Exactly. I was going to make that exception.
It's more like a professional announcer.
You said very early on, you build this network and you know what people are doing because they post.
Yes.
And I realized it's like an occupational hazard and such a benefit.
Yeah, it does.
I'm able to share what I do.
True.
And I'm being invited to a wonderful
conversation. In fact, I realized you were very active in this AI governance policy space because of your postings on LinkedIn. So that really helps. That really helps.
Yeah, but like I do feel like in some of these other social media apps, like attention, time sucks. So it's a very intentional decision. And I'm a private person in general.
Okay.
Despite what it might seem from this interview, but it's very like it's deliberate act of sharing some things, but I feel like especially on some types of social media.
So I highly appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to talk about meditation as well, because I think you've been practicing meditation quite seriously for more than a decade now.
Yeah.
So I have a fundamental question around this, right? So people have very different approaches to meditation. People do a lot of different things. So I was trying to understand, is there a right way to meditate?
So, right way to meditate. No, any meditation teacher that I've come across, there are instructions, of course, that you can follow.
No, like I'll tell you the context of this, right? So some just sort of focus on breath work, and some people sort of pray and meditate. And there are folks who have attended these silent retreats where they come out very transformed, where they don't speak for like 5-10 days or so. So what are all these different approaches to?
Sure. So, I was just I just did a retreat last year. And so, I've really tried to think about how we can simplify this. And I've tried to break it down to 3 rules or elements, how you want to describe it. The first one is be still, right? Which is, I think, essential for any meditation. Some people talk about, certain types of activities being meditative, someone's sketching, someone's walking, and that's fine. Those are meditative flow states, I would say. But that's not meditation in the way that I was describing it or I practice it.
Okay.
So I'm still, you can stand still, sit upright, sit cross-legged, but you got to be still.
Right.
2 is that, you'll have distraction. That's just the nature of the mind, of the body. You'll feel different things, some pain, some pleasure, some good thoughts, some bad thoughts. But you want to ultimately come back to a certain state.
Stillness, okay.
Stillness, right? And that can be, you can focus on your breath, on your thought, whatever it is. That it's not prescribed, right?
Okay.
So no right way of focusing on thing, but come back to whatever it is you are focusing on. Your body sensation, your thought, your breath, whatever it is. And the third is, and this is the larger existential kind of spiritual benefit, is just whatever happens, just let it be. You want to just be able to accept what it is. So is there a right way of doing it? If you are paying attention in a non-judgmental way to anything in your experience, I think that counts as meditation.
And how has this personally benefited you or helped you?
How has it benefited me and helped me? It's the most valuable thing I think I've done. I do. So beyond writing, I think it's the one thing that I prioritize. It's helped me because I think it helps me be less reactive, more responsive. So it's the difference between there's a stimulus and you acting immediately and there's this quote from Viktor Frankl from this book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I really like. He says, I'm paraphrasing this, but between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies a choice.
I think
in that choice
somewhere. Correct.
lies your freedom, right? So I think meditation just helped me see that space. Like anything, something happens, you kind of take a moment to just think about that, and then you decide how you want to respond rather than react.
So we'll move to the rapid fire round. So the first question, Bangalore or New Delhi?
Bangalore.
Okay.
I have to explain?
No, you don't have to. It's okay. Only if I ask you why.
Okay,
I haven't. One city
Bangalore.
outside India that you absolutely loved.
There's this place in Switzerland. It's called Montreux. They have this beautiful promenade.
I haven't even heard of this.
Yeah, it's near Geneva. I went to Geneva
Okay.
for work recently, and then I did a short drive, 45-minute drive. So it's
nice.
called Montreux.
Okay.
Beautiful place.
Yeah. Okay. Your idea of a perfect holiday?
Chill time, good food. Just relax and good food.
Okay. I actually there are options: mountains, beach, city.
That way.
Yeah.
Mountains.
Mountains?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. A dish you can never get tired of. Could be street food or comfort food.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's street food and comfort food for me. It's this Thai dish. It's called Pat Krapao.
Okay.
It's just like minced meat, chicken, whatever meat you like, pork with rice, fried egg on top. And it has this holy basil, that's this Thai basil thing.
Okay.
It's like very fragrant, flavorful dish. So it's very simple.
I should try this. I haven't tried this ever.
It's the one dish I make well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You cook?
This.
Oh, nice. That's
Maybe
nice.
only this.
Oh, okay.
I can survive. I just need,
Really?
I
Yeah, it
on
seems
this.
like a complete meal, right? There's meat and there's rice and
Exactly. And egg and it's comfort food.
Comfort food. Okay. Any favorite place to eat in Bangalore or Delhi that you keep going back to?
Oh yeah, actually just this new restaurant that's opened up at Royal China. I like Chinese
Where,
food.
in Bangalore or
Bangalore.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Fine. Music you've been listening to lately?
There's this electronic musician called Fred again. So it's just like ambient music, and it's I use it in different ways, like to focus, to chill, to relax. So there's this on YouTube. There's this Fred again live on in London on this guy called Arun's Rooftop. That's the name of the whole video.
Okay.
Fred again on Arun's Rooftop in
I'll
London.
go check it out. Okay.
Just chill ambient music.
A film or series that really stayed with you?
Can I do a book series? Sherlock Holmes?
Okay.
No. You want film? Oh, film. No, sorry. I'll do a film.
Mm.
Ex Machina. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah?
that. Humanoid robot and
Yeah, it seems like
issues.
we're on
Yeah.
on
Yes.
on brand, right?
Yeah.
It's the one movie, and when I teach at NLS, I do this movie screening with them because I
Okay.
think it just triggers a lot of, for me, philosophical questions about
Mm.
AI,
Mm.
AGI,
Mhm.
nature of the mind. So yeah, I love Ex
I
Machina.
liked that movie, but my favorite movie of all time, which I've watched like a multiple time, is Matrix.
Yeah, it's good.
Um, Books you would recommend for folks getting into tech policy?
Tech policy.
Yeah.
2 books. Artificial AI, so
Hmm.
Artificial Intelligence by Melanie Mitchell. It's just called Artificial Intelligence, but
Okay.
and written, by the way, in and around like pre ChatGPT and all of these models, but
Okay.
such a great simple explain. I would recommend it
Yeah.
highly.
Okay.
And on the policy side, legal policy side, Lessig's like Code is Law.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like that book? Have you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What else? A hobby or interest you enjoy that most people wouldn't associate with your professional life?
Oh, I like to play drums.
You do?
Percussion. Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
play along.
One daily habit that really improves your quality of life?
Yeah, we discussed
Meditation. Yeah, of course. An app or tool you can't do without?
App or tool.
Yeah.
I journal every day. There's this app called Day One.
Okay.
I use it every day. The thing that I really like is, it's this compounding effect where if I journal today, I've been journaling for now like more than a decade.
Really? Okay.
So it tells me like, here's the journal note from 8 years ago.
Wow.
And that's the value. It's
But you know what? I used to write, like physically write.
Yeah.
Then I had privacy concerns around it.
this
That was the
is
issue.
fully encrypted on device, encrypted. I'm very particular about this. So it's an independent app. I trust them. I've done my research around them, and they're really professional. Like I said, end-to-end encrypted on
How
device.
long have you been using this?
About
app?
this app maybe like 6 years.
Okay.
And before that, I had another journaling app. I used to use Evernote and so on. But
Yeah.
I've put it all together, so it's about 10 years worth of journal entries, like several thousand journal entries. So I like going back.
It's called Day One, right?
This is called Day
Okay.
One. It's available on both Android and Apple.
Great. Something you changed your mind about in the last few years? Could be work, life, or the world.
DJs? Yeah, I just mentioned this DJ. Yeah, I think like DJs, I used to think, talentless hacks, but like a good DJ understands music, understands human energy, understands, environment. So I've come to really appreciate a good DJ.
Right. I think especially in this AI automated world, that probably will make much more.
We talked about like
difference.
live performances.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
there'll definitely be, the music can be automated, but like you need a DJ to understand people's receptiveness and responsiveness. So yeah, I've changed my mind about that after going to some good DJ concerts. So that's what changed my mind.
Okay. How many languages do you speak? What are they?
Oh gosh, honestly,
Yeah.
actually good, only one, English. No.
What?
But-
Hindi?
Yeah, so I can manage Hindi, Oriya, where I'm from, some
Okay.
Bengali because it's kind of related.
Yeah. Is it similar anyways?
Similar, very
It is?
similar. So
Okay.
in fact, I would say maybe I know as good Bengali as Oriya, which is not to say well.
Okay. But you understand
Yes.
mostly.
And
Okay.
Kannada, of course, because I live here
Okay.
enough to get by.
So you know almost 5 languages.
I know one language and some other languages. Just trying to be honest here.
Okay. If you had a year completely free of professional obligations, how would you spend it?
Oh yeah, good question. How long?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Wow, 1 year is
You
a long
want
time. No. I have taken a sabbatical for 6 months. I would highly
How was
recommend
it?
it.
Yeah.
So I would do what I did there. It was important. It's like, between transitions, work transitions, personal transitions. I like to take some time off. I had the luxury. I think this was post Google. So yeah, I took 6 months off. So what would I do? I would definitely do like some time away by myself, solitude, like a retreat, silent for a month or so. I would learn a new skill, like ideally something with my hands. And I'm not particularly creative or not investing enough time. So maybe something around drawing, sketching, or gardening, or something like maybe more better music instruments. And I would write more, so maybe a book.
Great. So, Amlan, we have come to the end of the conversation.
wow, great.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the thoughtful conversation, and I wish you the very best in future endeavors.
Niti, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed myself. I don't think I've done this in this way, gone so deep, so personal. So thank you for the really interesting questions. Really professionally done, wonderful setup. I know you're new to this journey, so I want to wish you the best as well.
Thank you so much, and I welcome your feedback.
Of course.
Yeah, offline, whatever.
Offline.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.